When I first saw this problem, and I saw that a squared minus b squared had to equal 91, I thought, how can I write 91 as a difference of squares? And pretty quickly I saw that we could write it as 100 minus 9, in which case we have 10 squared minus 3 squared equals 91. So a is 10 and b is 3. And then if n is equal to a squared plus b squared, well, a squared is 100 and b squared is 9, so we have 109. And the units digit of that ends up being 9, which is answer choice E. Now, if you don't see that beginning step where a squared minus b squared equals 91 has a really nice answer, 100 minus 9, there's another way to get those numbers. We know that a squared minus b squared is 91, but we can factor a squared minus b squared as a difference of squares. So we've got a plus b times a minus b equals 91. And we can look at the different ways that you can factor 91. We know that 91 can be written as 91 times 1. We also know it can be written as 13 times 7. And we can also do this with the opposite, negative 91 times negative 1 and negative 13 times negative 7. In the end, it doesn't really end up making a difference, so let's just start with these. If 91 is factored as 91 times 1, we could have a plus b equals 91 and a minus b equals 1. But when you solve that system of equations, you end up with a equals 46 and b equals 45. And that's not going to work because we know that the sum of these squares has to be less than 1,000. So we cross this out. This is not a valid possibility. If we look at 13 times 7, we might have a plus b equals 13 and a minus b equals 7. If you solve this system of equations, you end up with a equals 10 and b equals 3, which, as we saw earlier, satisfies all the conditions we want. And you go through the steps that we went through earlier to end up with answer choice E. We could do things the other way around. Maybe a plus b is the factor that equals 7, and a minus b ends up being 13. But in a situation like this, we end up with a equals 10 and b equals negative 3. And if you go through the whole process, when we're looking to figure out what the value of n is, because a and b are squared, it doesn't actually matter that b was negative. The result ends up being the same. So regardless of how we find the values a and b, whether it's trial and error or whether we use this factoring, and regardless of whether we've got negative 3 or positive 3, or even positive 10 or negative 10, it all comes down to taking a squared plus b squared, which gives you 100 plus 9, which gives you 109, and the units digit is 9, answer choice E.